And yeah, this is fantastic. This is really, really good. And I would love everyone to hear this. So this is Dead Forest from Kill the Dragon by ModalModule. Enjoy. That is an amazing song. Honestly, that could be one of the greatest songs I think I've played on this podcast. I just can't believe how it just keeps stepping up and stepping up and stepping up. The intensity gets more and more, and then, you know, even it's really clever how I think you the intensity steps up, but then those really kind of soft pads come in, and they kind of give you this sense of relaxation or like a bit of peace. But it's still stepping up. It's still stepping up, and yeah, I don't. That's just fantastic, amazing job.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, there's a lot going on in that track. I hadn't heard that one in a bit. That is so it's called Dead Forest, right? The original track was called Forest, and so the way that game works, essentially the levels themselves sort of evolve, if that makes sense. So it starts out as a forest and then it ends up as a dead forest, and so the music changes, but again sort of has a callback. And in this case, I literally took the exact same track and I manipulated it. So I slowed it down. I added extra layers. I changed I think I distorted some instruments and stuff. Dead forest versus forest being alive. How do you sort of create that contrast? And so there was a number of things that I did to do that. I think it's poignant, if you will, that I've been playing a lot of tracks that has a lot of that. The tracks that I've chosen as inspiration have a lot of arpeggios, a lot of arpeggiated movement, because obviously you can hear here a perfect example of where those inspirations lead me. Because as you mentioned, there's a lot of arpejgiation in this track.
But, my goodness,
and there's a couple of different things.
Use of arpeggios I've heard in computer games, to be honest, like.
Thank you.
Because it doesn't stop, but every little section is doing something new and kind of directing. If I'm just talking simply, it's directing which beats my head are bopping down onto. Sometimes feels like I'm on the third, or like a triplet kind of thing, and then I'm on the 1 and 2. I don't know what it is, but it's.
So I wanted to have a little bit of a nerd moment on exactly what was happening there, because something that I've always been a big fan of is there's a couple of different terms. So poly patterns, polyrhythms, polymetrics. So it's the idea of superimposing two different rhythms on top of each other. And it could be, let's say like triplets over 16th notes, but that's like a really messy one. This is actually more like a grouping, right, of 16th notes being interpolated over another grouping. So the basic beat is a 4 16th note, pattern. Is kind of a simple way of breaking it down. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. The arpeggio for that section I think you're referring to is based in 6 16th notes. So essentially it's a 6/4 groove. So what ends up happening is, it ends up together and then separate, downbeat and then upbeat, as far as how the actual arpeggio resets. So the arpeggio is resetting in a different way than the rest of the rhythm is resetting. So it creates that sort of wishy-washy, almost dizzying effect. Now, at a slower tempo like this, it doesn't really have the same dizzying. It's more like, I guess in a way, it just kind of gives it a groove that's sort of interesting. This is really the kind of stuff that you hear in, for example, as far as going back to roots, like Latin music and stuff like that. They do a lot of stuff like that because it's fun and it's interesting. Even something like a clave, right? Yep. That's being superimposed over quarter notes. Got, in this way that ends up being bouncy. And you could look at that as a similar sort of thing, except that it resets in a more quick fashion. This one, it literally just keeps going and going, as you said. And then it eventually changes to something that actually follows the original pattern more accurately. It's actually an 8 16th note pattern that repeats instead of a 6 16th note pattern that repeats. So sorry, that was a little long. The point is that those are the kinds of things that I've always really, really enjoyed. Again, be it in video game music or outside. There's actually some bands that implement those kind of concepts almost all the time. Like there's one band I can think of called Meshuggah, which is totally not something that I think a lot of people would necessarily be into, again, because the sound is something they might not be able to get past. It's very, very heavy music, but they are all about superimposing different rhythmic ideas on top of each other. And as a person who headbangs, I have long hair and I move my head, it feels really cool when the music is dancing around that repetitive motion that my body is doing. And I think that's really the essence of what I like, is the energy that's created from that super imposition.
Yeah, very cool.
So yeah,
I think
but
very
really
well done. Oh yeah,
Sorry,
I was just gonna say very well done. And that's quite a lot of different styles and instrumentation on that soundtrack as well. So even though it's a work in progress, you've got it up there for you can buy it for $1,000 because you said the developer doesn't want it released to the public, but you can preview it on Bandcamp, and I'll definitely.
It's on Bandcamp. You could stream it. You can listen to it. So obviously listen to it to your heart's content. Anybody that's interested in hearing more. There's a lot of, as you said, different stuff. It's actually different energy as well. Like, for example, Forest is much more up-tempo, and that's a little bit more, I think, what you'd expect from that kind of a game. This one was slow, and that was maybe kind of a risk, but then, because I put the other more motion... Actually, I think that's why I did a lot of more motion as far as the background instruments was to create, to continue to have energy, despite being a slower tempoed track. Really quick shout out to Picky Source. He is literally an angel. I got scammed. This was a number of years ago. Some stupid, whatever it was, Craigslist, I was really desperate to make some dough. And there was this thing where, I was supposed to be doing a job for them and making money, but there was one of those, I don't know if you've ever experienced this or seen or heard of anything, but basically they send you a check and they say, oh, you have to cash it and then give us back some of it because that's the only way that it works, blah, blah, blah. So, you do that. And then of course the check itself ends up bouncing later. So you end up giving them your own money, and in my case, I ended up in the negative. And it was really, really a bad situation. It was a very low point in my life. So I actually did something that I've never done, which was essentially beg for money. But really what it was I set up, I think it was an Indiegogo or something, help me pay off my debt and I'll make you music. And Picky Source was literally the first one to actually just be like, you know what? Boom. And he gave me some money and he said, make me a track. And I had never even met this person. He actually found me through Twitter. It was like, somebody retweeted my desperate plea and he just was right away, right? Why not kind of thing, like help me out. And he enjoyed that track. That was the Forest track, so the original one that this one became the secondary for. He enjoyed the track so much he hired me to do the entire game, and he paid me up front, if I remember right, like a good amount to pay off my debts. Literally, he was like, you know what? I really enjoy your music, and I'm just gonna do this. I trust you.
That is,
And it was one of those moments, like literally, I'm getting chills even thinking about it. Like I haven't received that kind of help from people in my life very often at all. And he was just so willing to just do that right away, and he's like family, every time we talk, we talk about his kids and all that kind of stuff. We've traded like little things back and forth. I made this really goofy tavern song for him and then he played it for his kids and his kids were dancing to it. And so I ended up, oh, thank you. I ended up making a video of myself playing it on piano, like just for them to be able to watch or whatever. So it's just, those kinds of things that are it's just special. It's really something beyond just like a hired, gig. It's a really, really special experience. So the music that I made for that game started out and really has continued to just be a representation of my appreciation for this person as a human being, beyond just as a gig, And so even though this song is a really dark, kind of weird, creepy song, obviously that doesn't necessarily represent it. The heart that I put into it was in those details, was in those little extra things. And just it just is a representation of that appreciation I have. So that's all. I just wanted to give him a shout out.
That's a fantastic story. Why don't you get us to our next track? I think we're going to turn the intensity down a little bit with this next one.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, great selections and order because I think it's really doing a lot for the sort of the path of energy. The transition from higher to lower and that kind of thing. Which, by the way, you were talking about how that track increases in energy. That's a tendency I almost always have, and actually one of the developers I've worked with kind of like was the one to make me realize that. He was like, you like growing, don't you? Because I'll start a track real small and just build it up. And by the time it's ready to explode, then I have to go, okay, how am I going to get back down to the low energy? Because we have to loop, right? We're video game composers. It has to loop. So it's like, how do I, create that downward path? And a lot of times I'll literally just like, just kind of explode and then fade, and then there's the back to the loop of the low energy.
And then the next song that I've chosen as well is another perfect example of that.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, bring us into this next track.
But as far as As far as my track, now we're getting more to the traditional side, and definitely a very, very, very popular song that I'm sure, most of your audience has heard, if not, once a million times, and probably throughout their lives and as a kid, playing this game. This is from Donkey Kong Country 2 by David Wise for the SNES, and of course, it's Stickerbush Symphony. Here
All right.
All right, yeah, Stickerbush Symphony, a classic. Cannot go wrong with such an amazing tune. Yeah, so just a quick synopsis on why I picked this tune. I wanted something that had obviously a different energy versus the other stuff that I had picked, and also shows another side of what I'm inspired by, which is ambiance, but ambiance with melody. Ambiance that still has an emotional edge to it and still tells a story, if that makes sense. David Wise, in my opinion, is the number one example of a composer who's really met the crossroads of ambience, but also with a melodic and emotional center. Yeah,
with David Wise, he's probably, as far as all the stuff I've released on Spotify, my biggest hit. It's nothing I've written. It's my remix of Aquatic Ambience, and that's another.
Which, of course, this is the sequel to that.
It's
by the
just,
way. Yeah,
it's just perfectly written music, and but yeah, the ambience is amazing.
And by the way, I think I've heard that version that you did, and what I love is because, again, you have a very good handle of synthesis. And, granted, what he was doing on the SNES was unheard of. He was finding ways to create the same sort of timbral shifts that you would get from a synthesizer, with samples on, the Super Nintendo. That was something nobody else did. But the way you said, okay, I know what you're trying to do, and I can do that with synthesizers in a more, I guess you could say, traditional way. And the point is that I feel like you perfectly encapsulated the energy of what he really would have wanted to do if he could. You know what I mean? But he was working within his limitations. And I think he did a great job, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like yours is like, it's like the end of the road, like you made it there.
Yeah, thanks. Well, a lot of these remixes that I do, I try not to go too far away from the original feel of the song. I just want to kind of reinterpret it in a different way without making a different song. But that in particular, as one I always wanted to do, but I was very intimidated because even with that old, with the old SNES tech, it does sound pretty perfect. Like the original doesn't really need any improvements. But I just wanted to do it because I love the song, and I was like, I can do a version of this, and I'm gonna have fun doing it. But yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, no,
I agree that it doesn't need anything more. It's more just like, I guess, just a simple example is just adding some reverb. You know what I mean? Just adding a little bit more of that vibe. You know what I mean? Which is yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of, and that's what it is. It's more like a tribute rather than a remix. It's not like you're like, I'm gonna do something different with this, which is cool, by the way. There's some people that do amazing things when they're doing something different, but I appreciate that when it's literally, this track is already amazing, let's just make it amazing. Speaking of which, quick shout out to a project that I'm in, which is it's really funny. It's called Shrednobi, okay? And it's a Shinobi cover band, is really the simplest way to put it. We're eventually going to have other music, but for now we're playing literally music from the game Shinobi 3 for the Genesis, which I actually didn't pick any tracks from for this particular episode. But regardless, what we are doing is trying to recreate those tracks in a live setting as if the original composers wanted to play it in a band, so how would it sound if a band did this? So we're trying not to change anything really as much as possible. I'm actually using real Genesis sounds for keys. My brother's playing guitar. I did drum backing tracks. I actually performed the drum backing tracks, and then we have a bassist. But the point is that it's essentially what the music was originally, just with real instruments as far as guitar and bass. And drum samples or whatever, and then me literally just playing the key parts exactly as they are, because they're that good. They don't need anything else. They're fantastic tracks. Look up Shinobi 3, listen to that soundtrack, you'll know exactly what I mean. And another quick shout out about the Mikado Bros, they actually just did an episode on specifically that game, so you can listen to that too if you want. Anyway, let's move on.
I'll get a few links from you as well and put it in the description, and people can go and look for that kind of stuff. Definitely. Oh, for sure. Definitely worth checking out. I've seen a number of your live shows, and pretty spot on. I'm not someone who's ultimately like really familiar with the soundtrack, but I listen to your interpretations of it, and it's very well done.
And that was part of the inspiration too, was actually that it's not incredibly popular. Actually, most people think of the original Genesis game by Yuzo Koshiro, actually composed by. This one was actually by some, again, fairly unknown composers, but it's phenomenal music, and we wanted to celebrate that. We wanted people who maybe had never heard it to actually be able to hear it. So if you actually enjoyed what you listened to, then that's, again, honoring them. You know what I mean? Yeah, so everyone should check that out. I'll definitely leave a link in the description, as well as links to Modal's Bandcamp and anything else relevant to this episode. But let's move on to our next track. So this next track, we're going to move to a more recent game now. I'll let you describe that for us when we come back. But the next track, it starts off, it reminds me a little bit of Final Fantasy VII. And as we were discussing before, you have a tendency to just ramp up the intensity as the song goes on. And my goodness, this song kind of starts off kind of groovy, but a little bit sinister. And by the end of the loop, it's like you're ready to have a heart attack. The intensity and stress levels are just through the roof. The amount of key changes and stuff, it's really excellent. I love it. And that'll probably tie into your next track as well, even though you probably you sounded a bit surprised when I mentioned Final Fantasy VII. But if I heard this next track in Final Fantasy VII, I'd be like, whoa, whoa. I'll leave it at that. All right. So this next track is from a currently work in progress soundtrack and game that you're working on. Maybe just in a few sentences you can introduce that for us, just so we know exactly what we're getting into here. Yeah, absolutely. So the game is called Declines Drops. Again, solo developer that goes by, I'm going to butcher this, Drazglb. He has a backstory to his name, but it's basically just like a sound effect kind of thing. So it's meant to be kind of a silly thing, and he actually enjoys hearing people's pronunciations, so I'm sure he'll get a kick out of that. Long story short, he is an amazing artist, just makes really, really beautiful art, and so this game is essentially just him going all out with his art. And it was actually recently kickstarted successfully, so we're really, really happy about that. We've got some funding to work with to really, really bring this thing to the next level. There's a playable demo, so you can check that out too. Again, I'm sure he'll link everything for you there, but yeah, the game is called Declines Drops, and this track I'll explain sort of its purpose afterward. So we'll just go from there.
This is Vanitas by ModalModule. Enjoy. Vanitas by ModalModule from the currently in development game Declines Drop. And man, yeah, that last section, the intensity is through the roof. And that bass is just doing all kinds of crazy little things, and it just keeps, again, stepping up in a different way to Dead Forest. Dead Forest had a kind of, I guess, an emotional intensity. This is just like, I'm getting more and more stressed the more I listen to this song, and I'm loving every bit.
Yeah. So kind of a similar situation to Ancient Weapon, actually, although it's not a boss, of course. It's an extra level that you actually acquire by accomplishing certain specific things. So it's sort of like a secret level that you unlock, and it's really, really hard. And so the idea behind the Vanitas levels, there's going to be more than one, but this is, this was the first one in the demo, the only one in the demo, I should say, and the first one for the entire game. The idea behind them is to just punish you, to piss you off, and to force you to really get good. And this is a platformer, so the platforming aspect is what makes it hard. In fact, if I remember right, this level doesn't even have enemies, so it's just really hardcore platforming. So I mean, again, it's just one of those things where I wanted it to represent that as far as the energy, but it is also kind of a creepy, weird. The concept behind, I think the term Vanitas. I'm sorry, I always forget this. He's explained this to me so many times, but I think the concept is something about death and gold. So like you'll see golden skulls everywhere and stuff like that. So there's just a kind of a unique energy to that concept, which, by the way, is I guess an art style or something like that. It's not really specific to the game, but he was inspired by that for these levels. So that's the nutshell. That was the intention behind it. The energy ramping up was the idea that the level's going to start to get really, really difficult. Of course, then it loops back and, maybe it's an easier part of the level. I've played the level itself. I didn't actually have the level accessible when I made the track, so actually playing the level with the music, it ends up like the ramps end up fitting the level pretty good, actually, if you play it straight through. So that kind of worked out, I don't know if that was his intention, but it just sort of worked out that way, and it was pretty cool. But yeah, that's really the why. It's just like, you're going to be pissed off. It's going to be something that's bizarre and difficult. So I was just literally just trying to generate those two emotions, I guess you could say.
Well,
with that
very
track.
successfully done. Excellent stuff. And yeah, I said the beginning kind of reminded me a little bit of, I don't know, maybe being in the slums or something in Final Fantasy VII, which
I could hear that. Yeah. Now that you're being that specific, because that's the thing, is most of the Final Fantasies are so varied, you know, as far as the tracks. So I was picturing, like a town theme or something, and I'm like, that's why it seemed out. But you're absolutely right. The slums, it definitely has a kind of a similar energy. Again, seedy, I think, was a term you used when you were talking about the FF7 remix stuff.
There's nothing seedier than slap bass.
Yeah, exactly. No, and just those really weird chords. And I think what I really did for that one, which again was what I was hearing, was just this kind of parallel movement of the same kind of chord. I think it's like a minor 6/9 or something, and it's just moving in these really unusual ways, ways that don't really fit any particular key. Again, nerding out there, but yeah, that's just what created that energy.
Yeah, well, bring us into your next Final Fantasy VII track that you've chosen.
Yeah, so there you go. Spoiler alert again, but yeah, you mentioned Final Fantasy, and then I looked at the track list, and I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. So yeah, again, a more typical and more universally appreciated score, Final Fantasy VII by Nobuo Uematsu. I will say that this particular game was really pivotal for me. I was right at that age where I could really appreciate everything that it offered. I liked gritty things, I liked dark things, I liked serious things. I was past the little kids Disney stuff, which, by the way, I've kind of come full circle. I love Studio Ghibli and Disney and all that kind of stuff these days. But the point is, I was that angsty, preteen. So, this game came around and it was just like, oh yeah, this is it, and it was the first time that I heard music and that I actually realized that this was made by somebody. I don't know how else to explain it, but when it came to video games when I was a kid, I guess I just thought that the music just magically appeared. I really don't know what I was thinking, but I really understood with FF7 that there was a person that made this music, and then it came to find out who that person was, and kind of became obsessed with him and all the music that he's made. And it was just so pivotal for me. I mean, really, it was for me that moment of, I can do this too. I could make music for games too. Prior to that, I was making music literally just on the computer, for my own enjoyment, which was fine, of course. And it wasn't until years later that I actually pursued a career in making music for games, because I didn't feel I was making music as good as the music that was in Final Fantasy VII. Come to find out, Nobuo Uematsu is self-taught, has been from the beginning, and really just listened to a lot of music and learned how to emulate that music. So it was everything from classical opera to anime, and that kind of stuff. And he just had all these inspirations. Fusion, again, talking about YMO and all that kind of stuff. He just had all these inspirations and was able to sort of pull out of that stew, scoop all that, interesting melodic material and harmonic material and just create interesting music. And yeah, anyway, so this track is Genova, which is, crazy, disgusting boss. And, the music is not necessarily that creepy, but it's definitely got a weird bent to it, but it's also just really interesting, and again, arpeggios for days. So, fitting. Why not? So again, that's Final Fantasy VII Genova by Nobuo Uematsu. This was a PlayStation game. Here we go. that track so much. It's just, first of all, it's just driving. It's just constantly driving. Sorry, that was Genova, Nobuo Uematsu, Final Fantasy VII. It's just this consistent energy to it. Talking about the fact that I tend to build things, this does build a little bit, but really it's just a very consistent energy, which is very fitting for a boss battle, and especially in an RPG that's turn-based and you're sort of having to take your time and strategize. There's this consistent nature to it that really lends itself well. But yeah, I mean, so many interesting things. I actually did a piano. Again, I would use the word tribute because it was exactly, I was trying to get it exactly like this original version. There's actually a piano selection, whatever arrangement that for almost every Final Fantasy they do these piano arrangements, but the piano arrangement of Genova is completely different than the original. So I wanted to do one that was literally a tribute to the original. So I have that on YouTube, whatever. We can link it or whatever.
I'd be keen to see that myself.
Again, yeah. The reason that I bring it up is because I actually spent the time to transcribe it first and foremost in order to do that. And in doing so, I learned a lot of different stuff as far as what he was doing. And that very first arpeggio, I have my piano here next to me, but it's just such a very interesting thing. It's, you're adding a flat six to a triad. And so at one point he does it major, at another point he does it minor, but it just creates this really interesting, to me, it's almost an alien sound. It's like this, I can't tell exactly what's happening because minor sounds dark and major sounds happy, but then adding that flat six just throws those emotions into this different place. And anyway, so yeah, I think that was intentional because Genova is this really alien-looking creature, and so I think he really just encapsulated the energy of how I felt when I first laid eyes on this terrifying being that I had to try to, battle. And by the way, same with Ancient Weapon, she comes back around multiple times, and so you get different versions of this. I don't think it's different versions of this track necessarily, but there's actually motifs that are reused and that kind of thing. But yeah, all that to say, just the energy being so consistent and just driving is just something that I absolutely love. And all the different sections. I like that there's actually a little bit of hope thrown in there. I think the part I'm talking about. Again, it just kind of gets just that little bit of epic, like you're gonna win, kind of thing, just for that moment, and then back into crazy. I can't quite tell what the heck is going on. Yeah, arpeggios for days. Fun stuff. I love it. And that entire soundtrack, again, not a bad track in the entire soundtrack. Maybe some that are a little bit silly and whatever off kilter, but really just really well composed music through.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I can add much more to that. I was going to mention that that heroic section, that little bit of hope that it gives you.
Good.
I think that's it's definitely a very clever way of writing boss music, because you need that intensity, and you also need that feeling of maybe I can do this, So very, very well done.
Yeah, I did that in later tracks in the Super Gear Quest soundtrack, basically later parts of the game where it's like to tie in the fact that you're almost at the end, you're getting that feeling, but the earlier, obviously, again, Ancient Weapon was just straight up chaos. So
yeah. Well, let's move to another one of your quite upbeat tracks. And now this one features your brother on guitar. Sorry, I can't remember his name. What's his name? Dr. Shred or something?
Is
Captain Shred.
Captain Shred. Get it right. He's the captain of the Shred ship. No, yeah, he goes by Captain Shred. That was from way back.
Yep.
It was really just a joke. And actually, what's funny is he decided to use it. He's always been a shredding guitarist, and we've played in many bands together. I was alluding to me playing in bands, and he was almost always the guitarist in said bands. He has always been an amazing composer as well, but he spent a lot more time performing and shredding in his life thus far. But it's only been recently that he's actually now getting into video game composing on his own as well. And so, Captain Shred is a for-hire composer who is my brother, so you can imagine a similar energy, a similar set of inspirations, but definitely he's a really heavy guy. He plays really heavy music and also shreds like nobody I've ever met. I mean, he's just a phenomenal guitarist. So it was a given. There's been a couple of different tracks where I wanted guitar, and it was just a given that I would have him do it. And so this was an example of that. He's also, by the way, the one mastering the music in Declines Drops. So he is a part of the team, if only to do that, and then of course whenever I need him for guitar.
Yep. Well, let's get into it, because I love this guitar. I'm a real I'm especially a real sucker for the whammy bar, and he's doing a lot of really cool stuff with the whammy bar on this. So this is Battle.
I'll give myself credit for that, actually, because I originally wrote it on piano, on keyboard, in the DAW, which again, I was talking about the portamento. I did that exact technique to bend all those notes. And then when I gave it to him to play guitar, I was like, listen, I really want those bends in there. Can you do those bends? And he was like, I don't know if I'll be able to do all of them, because it's, there's a physical constraint on the instrument, but he did a bang up job in really trying to use as many of those bends as possible.
I'm even thinking of that little, it's not quite a vibrato, but I don't know if you're familiar when you flick the whammy bar and it just kind of growls, like that kind of sound.
Yeah.
A little bit of that in there as well. I love that stuff. Whammy bars, just the best.
Yeah.
So this is Battle with Ravage from Decline's Drop.
Yeah.
Again, by ModalModule. Please enjoy. All right. That was Battle with Ravage from Decline's Drop by ModalModule. What an excellent tune. It's great to hear that guitar in there. I think, you got the guitar. I'm pretty sure you're doubling it with the synth behind. And
at times,
there's some really cool parts. Like, for sake of time, I won't go into all of it. But probably my one standout bit, and it only stands out by a little bit because it's all really great. But I don't know how you do it. It's the anticipation of that note, that just that lead up to it every time gets me. It's so good. Little touch, just little touches like that. You don't necessarily just write a melody like that. You got to be thinking outside of just notes. That's expression, and I love it.
Right. So actually, on the subject of chiptune, that's to me a very chiptune technique. There's some really good contemporary chiptuners out there. I'm gonna give a quick shout out to Defense Mechanism. Love his music, and he's a really great dude in general. And I feel like he's probably where I heard that in a more contemporary sense and went, man, that's awesome. But what ends up happening, and this was when I was doing the Game Boy tracks a lot, which was prior to this, was I would start to hear more of those kinds of things. These portamento leaps into the melody, where it starts lower and it ends up, but it's as you said, it goes right before.
It's like the first note doesn't even
on
exist.
On the downbeat.
It's just starts somewhere and
it's
comes up to the note.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just an energy there that I just love, and it creates like a fluidity too, And again, same thing with the portamento on the guitar with the whammy allowing for that portamento is it just creates this fluid movement. It's not just rigid. Because, I play piano, and piano is very rigid because you can't bend notes. You can't slide from one note to the other, really. You can throw your hand across and it's just going to smear the notes together, but you're not going to actually legitimately bend and do that kind of thing. So anyway, the point is that I really enjoy the expressive capabilities of other instruments that can do that. Violin is a great example, again. And so for synth, again, that is available to us as synthesists to be able to do these kind of slidey movements. And again, because I hear those things in my head, being able to pull them out is actually really great for me. And I hate that when I'm on piano, I can't do that, So that's actually, an advantage, if you will, of other instruments. But yeah, this is just to give a little quick background. This is the first boss of the game, and so this was the only boss in the demo, and this is actually loosely based on the first level's music, which was actually written by the developer. This is yet another example of a developer. A developer initializing, let's say, the music. But he actually was the one that he reached out to me. I didn't reach out to him. So this was a unique situation. He wanted me to compose the music, but he had existing music, and he said, either you can keep these or you can replace them. I don't care, but this is what I did. And he's an acoustic guitarist, so he made some really nice acoustic guitar music. And I liked the music, so I didn't want to get rid of it. But what I did want to do was be inspired by it for the other areas of that world. Yep. It's kind of a, almost like a Super Mario World concept where like each area is called a world and it has its own sort of, vibe or whatever. So this world, each level's music is actually inspired by the first level of the world's music. So each one has, it's kind of hard to explain. Obviously, if you listen to them back to back, and especially if you are a musician and you can really kind of analyze it, you can see how they're connected, because it's not that obvious. But with this one, literally the A section and the B section were both directly inspired by his material. So fun fact.
Yeah, I love that extra depth that goes into a soundtrack that's not just a collection of songs, but it all ties together.
That's something that I honestly am a huge advocate of, by the way. So that's why I did it a lot in Super Gear Quest, and as well I'm attempting to do it in Decline's Drops. It's just it varies. But
yeah. All right. Well, why don't you bring us into your next PlayStation track that you've chosen for us?
All right. Awesome. So this is another, in my opinion, lesser known or perhaps lesser celebrated soundtrack. Not necessarily lesser celebrated composer. He's actually done a lot of different stuff. This is Valkyrie Profile by Motoi Sakuraba. And this soundtrack, again, the chronology is very accurate here. I played Final Fantasy VII. I listened to the music. It was amazing. It blew me away. Then I think I actually heard Valkyrie Profile's music before I played the game. And it was just a complete mind-blowing experience. It was like nothing I've ever heard. And again, there's a lot of variety, just like it is an RPG, so it's kind of the same idea as far as like different areas, town themes and boss themes, and you're gonna have dark and light and low energy and high energy. But a lot of his tunes are just super rocking, and this is an example of one that's just like you could totally picture a band playing it. And in fact, he does actually have his own band that plays some of these tracks as well nowadays. So that's kind of fun. But anyway, so this is called "Originating from Chaos" from Valkyrie Profile by Motoi Sakuraba. Let's do it. All right. Yeah, so Originating from Chaos by Motoi Sakuraba for Valkyrie Profile. That was a PlayStation game. I mean, honestly, all I'm going to say is it speaks for itself. Really, really interesting. Like, obviously, it's got that heavy, drum part, or drum layer, but it does have some orchestral elements and a lot of different things that he kind of toys around with, and it's just so interesting. Another example of just really unique music, and it makes me feel it makes me feel things that I really enjoy. So I'll just leave it at that. Motoi Sakuraba has done a lot of different stuff, so if anybody enjoyed that track, listen to all of his music. Star Ocean: The Second Story is a great example. Most of the Star Oceans he did, and with or without help. And so yeah, there's a lot of good music out there that he's made. So check it out.
Yeah, great. I'll definitely have to check out more of his stuff as well, because I'm not too familiar. But I'm excited about what's coming next, because you have brought into us an unreleased track. Can you please introduce this for us? This is very exciting.
Absolutely. So this is also Declines Drops. We're continuing development. After the Kickstarter was successful, we just carried on, and there's a lot of plans as far as the amount of there's going to be a lot of material to play, and of course therefore material that I have to make music for. And so this is just a part of that. This is the second world, and this is toward the end of the second world. It is underwater. I don't want to give too much away, but that's really just the vibe that was the goal here. Now, you might be thinking aquatic ambiance, because I did play another David Wise track after all, and you wouldn't necessarily be entirely wrong. I think that there's definitely an energy there that maybe is similar, but the long and short of it is this actually came to me in the middle of the night. I was very just kind of like out of it and playing my piano, and this was more of a, I think, physically inspired thing. So I most of my music, as I said, comes from inside in my mind, so I call it internally written. This was more maybe physically written, because I was on the instrument just kind of like playing and just flowing. So it's a different way of approaching, and I've actually been doing more of that lately for this soundtrack, just because it kind of calls for it. I tend to play more jazzy, I guess is a simple way to put it. Not that this track is necessarily jazzy, but anyway, that's all I'll say, is basically it was inspired as I was playing, thinking about the game, and just letting my fingers flow on the instrument.
Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard this first on Voltz Supreme's Synth BGM Dream Stream Machine podcast. All right, let's go. This is Abyss. Am I right? Is that what it's called?
Yes. Sorry. It's Petroleum Port is the world. So Abyss is the name of the track, but yeah, it's Petroleum Port,
All
Abyss.
Right, let's give it a listen.
import Abyss for Declines Drops, written by me, ModalModule. And yeah, definitely a different energy than anything else I've brought in. I'm glad that I could do that to create, a little bit of variety in my tracks, even though you picked the rest of my tracks anyway.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different styles that you've done that I haven't touched on at all. So it's definitely worth people's time to go out and check out some of your other projects for sure.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff that you can listen to. Anybody, again, if you just go on my Bandcamp, there's a lot of stuff that's just, fun stuff, dark stuff, heavy stuff, light stuff, orchestral stuff, acoustic stuff. Speaking of which, I wanted to mention that Declines Drops is primarily more of an acoustic instrument soundtrack. That was sort of the intention. It is actually going to get more synthy, spoiler alert, as the game goes on. But I know that Voltz had possibly some challenges picking out tracks from that game specifically, just because this is a synth podcast and it needs to have some synth involved if possible.
You haven't released many songs either. There's only like 7 songs
Right.
available or something like that, I think.
No, you're absolutely right. Right, that's part of it. But yeah, you found the 2 that have some synth elements. Just to really quickly clarify on Battle with Ravage, because I think it's kind of fun. Most of the instrumentation is actually SNES samples. So you've got like the Mega Man X slap bass, for example, and I think I used the Mega Man X drums as well. That was actually just kind of like what I had available at the time. I think it was a new computer and I hadn't loaded everything onto it, and I just kind of went with that because it was easily accessible. And, the developer liked it, I liked it, so we just went with it. So it was like whatever. But for a lot of other tracks, especially the level tracks, is really where it's more acoustic instruments. And then I'm using more clean sounding instruments rather than, those kinds.
That's great. Let's move to, you got another Final Fantasy track coming up, I see.
Right, so similar to Mega Man, which has been a big part of my life, both, again, the NES and the SNES specifically series is, Final Fantasy has been as well, although I started with FF7, so I haven't actually played any of the early ones. Well, I've touched the earlier ones, but I haven't played them extensively. I know everybody tells me I need to play FF6. I'll get around to it someday. But, 8, 9, 10, and on and on. So this is actually from 10, and again, I could have picked anything. It was really just this was what I decided to go with. So yeah, this is a track called Hurry from Final Fantasy X, and it's actually by Junya Nakano. So Nobuo Uematsu was on this game, of course. He did most of the music, but Junya Nakano and our buddy Masashi Hamauzu both also did tracks for this game. And I actually really, really like their tracks. I like Nobu's as well, but they were just so surprising because they were very different, and so this is an example. Hurry from FF10 by Junya Nakano. Let's do it. Man, another track that I just absolutely love. Now, that one, what I really like... Sorry, Hurry from Final Fantasy X, Junya Nakano. What I really like about that one is... actually kind of similar to Genova, that driving energy, but it's in a different way. Obviously, this is, a little bit more of an orchestral bent. And again, it does have just enough synth involved. But what I really, really love is during sort of the middle of the loop, when those big horn chords come in, and it's just this wall of sound, as you put it, absolutely aptly while we were listening. But it's specifically the voicing, specifically the chord that he uses, which is like a fully extended chord, which, I mean, again, for a non-musician may not make much sense, but basically triads are your normal chords, which are 3 notes. This is probably like a 5, 6, maybe even 7 note chord. It's just so expansive,
super dense,
as far as the yeah, and the colors that you get from that. So when it comes to triads, I look at like primary colors, right? And with extended chords, it's like a pastel, lavender, with like a little hint of green or something. It just becomes this very complex sound and emotion as well that comes with it. So I just love, they really, really did a lot of that in this soundtrack and beyond. Basically every other Final Fantasy from here on really does just create these extra colors that I just love. So yeah, that's my summary.
Awesome. Yeah, a fantastic track. Fantastic soundtrack. Definitely a bit, I don't know, maybe a little bit inconsistent. But Junya Nakano, definitely go and check out some of his solo stuff that he's released. He's got some albums I've noticed on Spotify just in the last 10 years, which are definitely worth checking out because they're really nice tracks. And they've got that... they've got that kind of video game ambience feel to it that is just really cool and definitely worth checking out. I would encourage it.
If there's anything similar to the energy that that I've heard from his game soundtracks, I'm 100% on board. And I hadn't heard about that. I mean, I shouldn't be too surprised because these are the kind of the young up and coming guys, so I'm sure they've got a lot of stuff going on, but I just haven't kept track. So yeah, I will absolutely do that. I'm actually really excited to look into that because yeah, he's become one of my absolute favorites in recent years.
But I don't think he's done heaps of soundtracks lately. So, but he's done he's put these albums out, which are, just as good, really. They're just not connected to any soundtracks. So, well, I'm disappointed they have to rush this last little section, but I'm running out of time as my family's about to duck off to a family member's birthday. But you've got one more Final Fantasy song that you've chosen for us. Again. Yes. Another Final Fantasy series, all the Final Fantasy, whether it's like a trilogy like this one or the individual games you've chosen before, definitely resonate with me. And I've talked a lot about these games in the past, but yeah, this is another fantastic bunch of soundtracks, bunch of games. Hit us with this last pick of yours, and then we'll close out.
Absolutely. So this is from FF13-2, which. Really, again, I could have done any of them from 13, 13-2, 13-3. They're actually all very good and actually very different. But why I wanted to do something from 13-2 was there was a specific energy that I really feel like this game, they tried to do, which was more electronic, more, I would say, modern sounding, just a very interesting, vibe. And for me, the reason that it really stuck out is because I feel like it's not something I myself have exposed myself to much. So it's almost like, again, like we were talking about, roots. This game, I feel like their roots were probably in contemporary electronic music that existed prior to the game, but since I hadn't really heard that and I really enjoy this, it's sort of like I can just enjoy that concept, that genre, through this game, through this music. And so this one was composed by Naoshi Mizuta, who is a really phenomenal, again, slightly unknown or lesser appreciated composer, making really, really amazing music. And this one is called Labyrinth of Chaos. Here we go.
Fantastic. All right.
Okay, so a little clarification. That was more of an ambient sort of orchestral one. I was thinking of a different track that I actually failed to find. I will find it eventually, of course, and I'll be kicking myself. But for now, that was actually another track that I really enjoyed, so nothing wrong with that. But Naoshi Mizuta did a lot of the more electronic stuff as well. So, but yeah, all that to say, really cool, just vibey track, you know, and I think a good one to end it out with, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. And again, much like some of your songs, there's a real heaviness with the emotions, especially in that middle section. Yeah. I think Naoshi Mitsuda really did a good job of kind of continuing on what Masashi Hamauzu started with the first Final Fantasy 13, and then did his own thing, but really, it's very well connected to the music that was already set up for the series. So yeah, and another excellent choice, and a good mix of the synth and the orchestral kind of string sounds.
Yeah. Just enough synth blended in there. So, but yeah, actually, I wanted to touch on that really quick. You're absolutely right. It is an extension of what Masashi Hamauzu developed through FF13, which is a fantastic soundtrack. I just want to say really quick, just some shout outs to some amazing composers that I didn't end up using. Masashi Hamauzu being on the top of that list. He's become literally one of my absolute favorites. He's very, very high up on my list at this point. Absolutely phenomenal composer. So the fact that you are also a big fan of his was actually a really funny coincidence when I realized that, and it's only been recently that I realized that. I listened to every episode you did that had him involved, which was quite a few because you like him, you know, and you really like his music. So 100% that guy I really just want to give him credit. But also Hitoshi Sakamoto, FF12, he just did a lot of really good orchestral stuff. The reason I didn't pick him is just not very much electronic. Kenji Yamamoto, you know, Metroid Prime, Yoko Shimomura, Street Fighter 2, along with everything. I mean, she's just prolific as heck. And Michiru Yamane, who is also very prolific Konami composer. Castlevania Symphony of the Night was hers. So, I mean, there's a million composers out there that are phenomenal, and I could go on all day, but I just wanted to give a shout out for those, you know, close contenders for my choices. And, but yeah, back to this track being super ambient, super good. Naoshi Mizuta is also fantastic and also very varied. You know, again, he does really upbeat electronic, you know, heavy stuff, you know, battle themes and stuff like that as well. So it's just, you know, it's I'm so blessed just to be in the world, the same world as these phenomenal composers, to be just endlessly inspired by. Honestly, that's just a huge thing for me.
Yeah. And definitely, like, one of the amazing things I've found about doing a video game music podcast is, you know, you start searching, you're looking for songs for different episodes, that kind of thing, looking for topics, and there's always something. When you think you've got all the top dogs kind of lined up, you'll find someone else, and they're going to blow your mind. And, you know, you are one of those people, someone who most people probably have never heard of, but it's been a pleasure for me to share your music, because, again, this is just like, you know, you said it before, we connected through the Mikado Brothers Discord. If I wasn't on that Discord, I wouldn't know about your music, and here I am playing some of my most favorite stuff I've played on this podcast so far. So yeah, there's so many amazing talents around the world that we just don't know of yet, and we're still waiting to uncover. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and finally hear some stuff from your perspective and share some of your music and all that. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for listening to my music. Thank you for understanding what it is that we appreciate about music, you know, on such a deep level that we really can't even put into words. I mean, this podcast is about celebrating music, but perhaps not going into crazy deep philosophical, you know, explanations of that celebration. The bottom line is that it speaks to us on a very, very deep, you know, level. And yeah, I mean, I just want to give one last shout out, really, just to the community, the VGM community, the chiptune community, which are of course intersecting. Twitter is a place that I've connected to a lot of people on, and it's a beautiful thing. If anybody is starting out with music and, you know, kind of interested in developing themselves and maybe connecting with other musicians, get on Twitter, get on Discord, get in these servers and you know, share with people, and I can just speak from personal experience that it's been an absolutely amazing thing for me. You know, I've been sort of active in these circles for maybe 5-6 years now, and I've never felt so welcome. I've never felt so warm and appreciated, but also like it's bigger than just a singular thing. You know, we're all a part of this thing, and it's really amazing, and I can't recommend enough just being a part of it if you have any interest at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely a very unique community, very friendly on the most part. But look, as we're going to close out, I've got one last little special thing that I want to play. So one of my favorite songs from Super Gear Quest that I didn't play is this track called Mount Makula, I believe it's pronounced. And when I heard that track, very, very different to a lot of your other stuff. It still has that emotional weight to the melody and the chord choices, that kind of thing, but it's a very restrained song. And when I heard it, I didn't think this for any other track, but I heard this one track and I'm like, you've got to give me the MIDI file for this. I really want to do a remix. I started working on it last year. I was making excellent progress and just literally hit a wall, and it was only last night that I kind of pulled it all together. I ended up just deleting a whole lot of tracks that I'd put in that I was trying to kind of salvage. I just got rid of them, and I was like, all right, let's just kind of start again. And
clean slate, yeah.
Semi-clean slate. But anyway, I absolutely love this song, and it has been a lot of fun for me to put this remix together of one of your tracks. So I really hope that you enjoy it. I've tried to, like we were talking about with David Wise, I've tried to not go beyond what the song is, but tried to just give a different representation of it or something like that. I don't know. I love this track. I just want to say really quick that just the idea of somebody remixing my track is like something I couldn't even have considered, years ago. Like, because I just feel like this small little person in this huge world, and I'm just making music that, really doesn't go very far or whatever. So I want to say that I really appreciate. I don't even care what it sounds like. I just appreciate the idea that alone that you would want to remix something that I made. Like, that's just wow. I just feel amazing just knowing that. So thank you very much for being interested in such a thing. No, it's great. So this is Mount Makula, originally from Super Gear Quest. This is the Voltz Supreme remix. And again, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll close with this. And all the links will be in the description. Please go check out ModalModule. Check out the games that he's done the music for. And we'll see you all on Discord or something like that. Yeah, thank you so much for having me again, and have fun with your family, man. That sounds like a good time. I will. Cheers. All right, ciao for now, and remember to stay synthetic.